Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here to do my April book haul. I'm doing this a little bit early. I usually wait until really close to the end of the month. There's still a week left, but I am calling this a little bit early because I don't think anything else is going to come in. Independent Bookstore Day is Saturday, April 30th, but I'm not going to wait for that to do my April book haul. Anything I pick up on that day will wait until May. This is going to be a little unconventional because I was all set to film my book haul with the 5 books that I had. However, the mail just arrived and a book came from overseas. So we're going to wing the end of this book haul just a little bit as we open that one live. I know what it is already, but I haven't prepared anything. So we're going to just open it together and talk about it in real time. And let's start talking about the other 5 books that were already here. I'm really excited about these. I've been trying to do more intentional book hauls this year, really think about the books that I am bringing into my library, my likelihood of reading them, if they are something I really just want to support an author or publisher, and I don't want to bring things in that are just going to sit there for a really long time and I will never get to, and that don't qualify as like a library builder or anything like that. It's a journey I've been on with my book haul revisits. I'll put a link to my most recent book haul revisit in the description box down below. You can check that out. It's been a process. I have learned about myself as a reader. Is that knowledge coming to any kind of fruition? I hope so. My book hauls have definitely gotten smaller. I feel like they're getting much more intentional, and that is a good thing. Anyway, the first book that I brought into my library in the month of April is True Biz by Sara Nović. I'm really excited about this one, which is published by Random House, because this is particularly interesting in the wake of Coda winning Best Picture at the Oscars. I like that movie a lot. And this is a sort of coming-of-age novel set in a high school for deaf students. And Sara Nović is a deaf author, and she writes a coming-of-age novel about living as a deaf person in the world. It's about the anger of being othered and marginalized by society, and it's about living in a world that isn't built for you and is sometimes intentionally inaccessible to you as a non-hearing person. And to me, that all sounds really interesting. And one thing that was particularly of note once the book came in is that it is a little unconventional. There are sections that really have these little charts, and it seems like there are parts that are where people are signing that are kind of indented and handled a little bit differently. And what I've heard about this book is that it does really immerse you in the mind of a deaf person and put you in their worldview. And as someone who is hearing, I really want that experience. So this is something I'm really hoping to get to, hopefully this year. I have a lot on my plate right now, but we'll see when I get to it. I really liked Coda. I want to continue that experience and get this book in at some point. It sounds fascinating to me. In my book hauls, I like to do a little bit of the opening of the book just to give you a sense of what the book is like. So let's do that here. And by the way, each chapter opens with a sign as well. February Waters was 9 years old when she, in the middle of math class, in front of everyone, stabbed herself in the ear with a number 2 Ticonderoga. Their teacher had been chalking the 12 times tables up on the board, providing February a window in which to sharpen the pencil, the grinding drawing her classmates up with their daydreams, their eyes following her across the room toward the teacher's corner. February stepped unsteadily on the felted swivel chair, then planted herself in a wide stance on the desk and jammed the pencil deep into her left ear. That's a really hard opening for a book, and I'm guessing that's a flashback because February is the headmistress of the school, who it is described on the opening flap is fighting to keep her school open and her marriage intact and might not be able to do both. So I'm guessing that's a little bit of a backstory about her. By the way, I should explain, True Biz is a piece of slang in American Sign Language, which is its own language, has its own set of slang, and True Biz is like, really or seriously, that kind of thing. And now that I have this open, I want to read this last paragraph of the blurb on the inside flap because I think it pretty perfectly sums up this book and why it is interesting to me. This is a story of sign language and lip reading, disability and civil rights, isolation and injustice, first love and loss, and above all, great persistence, daring, and joy. Absorbing and assured, idiosyncratic and relatable, this is an unforgettable journey into the deaf community and a universal celebration of human connection. Really excited to get to this book, and hopefully I will manage to do that soon. The next book is something that was talked about by a couple of people in the UK, most notably Jen the Librarian and Jackie McMenamin, who is a commenter. It is blurbed by Karen Millwood Hargrave, the author of The Mercies, and Evie Wild, author of The Bass Rock. On the back, it is Devotion by Hannah Kent, and it has this gorgeous foil cover that just shimmers nonstop in the light. I hope you can see that, because I can't stop doing it. I'm watching it as I film right now. It's just a beautiful cover. I've heard a lot of great things about this book, and I wanted to make sure I got a copy, so I ordered it from the UK, and it is here now. This is published by Picador, and set in Prussia in 1836. Devotion follows Hannah, who is nearly 15, and feeling that, quote, the domestic world of womanhood is quickly closing in on her, end quote. Hannah feels more at home wandering in nature. She finally finds acceptance and friendship in another girl named Thea, but things get complicated when their community begins a journey to Australia in search of religious freedom, and the dangerous journey across the waters tests the bonds of their relationship. And I've heard really good things. I've heard there's some kind of like a little twist about halfway through. I don't really want to know much more about it. I kind of want to read it and experience it for myself. So we'll see when I get around to this. The first part is called The First Day, and it begins in a small little chapter called My Heart is a Hand Reaching. Thea, there is no line in your palm I have not traced, no knuckle cracked unheard, and the blue of your eyes is the coffin lining of the world. I would they sing psalms to you and the down upon your thighs and the eyelashes that have fallen to the fields you have worked. I would they lay boughs upon knees bent to the soil hum of any place you have rested upon. Thea, if love were a thing, it would be the sinew of a hand stretched in anticipation of grasping. See, my hands, they reach for you. My heart is a hand reaching. And that is the opening of Devotion by Hannah Kent. Really excited to get to this at some point. Hopefully this year. We'll see how that goes. The next one is Brickmakers by Selva Almada, translated from the Spanish by Annie McDermott. This is a really interesting cover in the US edition of it. I heard about this book on Books and Bows channel. They had mentioned it at some point on there, and it sounded really interesting. It is funny because when I looked it up online, I was reading the description of it and thought to myself, oh, this sounds like West Side Story. And then later on in the description, it describes the Tamai and Miranda families are caught, like the Capulets and Montagues, in an almost mythic conflict, one that emerges from stubborn pride and intractable machismo. And I thought, okay, Romeo and Juliet, close enough. And that is exactly why this interested me. It's also a short little book. But basically, it has a gay twist on Romeo and Juliet, or West Side Story. The reason West Side Story jumped out to me is that it's more gangs than families feuding, but it is about families more than gangs. So I guess it is kind of like a fusion between the two of them. But anyway, there are two teenage sons, Pajaro and Angelito, who fall in love despite the fact that their families are kind of at war after years of a mutual hatred. Brickmakers begins as Pajaro and Angelito's older brother lie dying in the mud at the base of a Ferris wheel. Inhabiting the dreamlike state between life and death, they recall the events that forced them to pay the price of their father's petty feud. This is really a book about toxic masculinity as much as it is about that kind of Romeo and Juliet love story. And that, to me, makes this really interesting. The other thing that jumped out to me was that Selva Almada is described as in this way. She is considered one of the most potent literary voices in Argentina and Latin America, and one of the region's most influential feminist intellectuals. I mean, sign me up. I'm really interested in that. Let's do the opening of Brickmakers. The Ferris wheel has emptied out, but the seats are still swaying gently. Must be the dawn breeze. To Pajaro Tamay, sprawled on his back, it's like the giant wheel is still turning, but it can't be. There's no music. He can't hear a thing. His head is full of white noise. White like the sky. He's never seen it this way. With the ride partly silhouetted against it, a blurry smear of machinery, which is all his eyes can take in. He squints in case that stops the spinning. It makes it worse. He feels dizzy, and now it's not just the Ferris wheel moving, but the whole world. And that is the opening of Brickmakers by Selva, Almada, and translated from the Spanish by Annie McDermott. Really looking forward to trying to get to this at some point this year as well. That takes us to the next book, which is The Blackwater Lightship by Colm Tóibín. I had been wanting to read a book by Colm Tóibín for a really long time. I haven't read one of his yet. I thought it was going to be The Story of the Night, and then Matthew Shree told me that this one is actually his favorite. I've seen that echoed in a couple of other places. So then I looked at the premise of the book and was immediately sold. And now I think that this one is going to be the first book by Colm Tóibín that I end up getting to. I don't think I've mentioned the publisher of Brickmakers, by the way. It is Grey Wolf Press. This one is published by Scribner. Set in Ireland in the early 1990s, this book was published in 1999 and was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. Blackwater Lightship follows Helen as she, her mother, and her grandmother come together to care for Helen's brother Declan as he dies of AIDS. It's about 3 generations of a family coming to terms with each other, confronting their history together, and mourning a life that will be lost too soon. And I think that gives you a really perfect summary of why this book seemed particularly interesting to me. It's probably going to be devastating, but I'm really looking forward to reading it and being devastated by it. Chapter 1. Helen woke in the night to the sound of Manus whimpering. She lay still and listened, hoping that he would quieten and turn on his side and sleep. But when his voice became louder and more insistent and she could vaguely make out words, she got out of bed and moved towards the boy's room. She was unsure whether he was dreaming or awake. And that is the beginning of The Blackwater Lightship, shortlisted for the Booker Prize by Colm Tóibín. Next is another book I'm really excited about. It is Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park, translated by Anton. This was on the long list for the International Booker Prize. I'll put my reaction to that in the description box down below. It immediately jumped out to me. I had thought when the Women's Prize was announced that I was going to jump on a bunch of books on that list, but the International Booker really stole the Women's Prize thunder for me this year. And this is one of the books that I ordered off of that will be important when we get to the box that I'm going to open. But this did not make the shortlist. I still really wanted to read it, so I waffled back and forth about whether or not I was going to order it, and then here it is. This is published by Grove Press. It is described as, quote, a wry portrait of millennial loneliness, and it follows, quote, the abundant joys of queer life. So there's really no way this book was not going to catch my eye and call to me and insist, order me. And here it is. It follows a cynical Korean student as he navigates Tinder matches, clubs, hookups, friendships, an ailing mother, and the loss of his best friend, who is his female roommate, after she decides to settle down and leaves him alone. It sounds really interesting. I've heard great things about this book, so I'm really looking forward to getting to it. Let's do the opening. Part 1, Jae-hee. Jae-hee is his female friend and roommate. 1. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor of the hotel and went into the Emerald Hall. Had she said the guest list was 400 people? It looked like a lot more than that. I sat down in my designated seat and looked around the table. My cohort of French majors, all of us aging at different speeds. How many of them were there? I guess this was the reward for Jae-hee saying yes to every post-graduation bender and homecoming day event. Moments like these made Jae-hee's social life seem to border on the grotesque. I was forced to acknowledge acquaintances I hadn't talked to in 5, even 10 years. Congratulations, I hear you're a writer now. You should get in touch more often. And so on. That is the opening of Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park, translated by Anton. Really looking forward to this. There are blurbs on the back from Jared Conley, who is the author of Boy Erased, Kyung-Suk Shin, who has written Please Look After Mom and Violets, which I just finished reading. Really looking forward to this book. Now we get to the Blackwell's box that came. And again, I know what this is, but it arrived just as I was getting ready to sit down and do this video. So let's open this up, and you get to watch me fight with cardboard right now. It is a big one. Let's drop the order slip. It's Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. I'm really excited about this. So the reason this ties back to the International Booker, which I hinted at when I was talking about Love in the Big City, is that this was also on the International Booker long list. This one did make the short list. It is a big old brick of a book, So this is going to be a project when I do get around to it. I should mention that this is translated by Daisy Rockwell, and it is published by Tilted Axis, I believe. Yes, it is. Now, since I haven't had a chance to prepare for this one, I don't have a blurb ready to go or thought out, so I'm just going to read you the back of the book. In northern India, an 80-year-old woman slips into deep depression at the death of her husband, then resurfaces to gain a new lease on life. Her determination to fly in the face of convention, including striking up a friendship with a Hijra person. Hijra is a term that I believe means transgender. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think it is. It confuses her Bohemian daughter, who is used to thinking of herself as the more modern of the two. Rather than respond to tragedy with seriousness, Geetanjali Shree's playful tone and exuberant wordplay results in a book that is engaging, funny, and utterly original, at the same time as being an urgent and timely protest against the destructive impact of borders and boundaries, whether between religions, countries, or genders. Really looking forward to this book. I just had to have it, basically. The description of it reminds me of A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry in a way. I don't think it's going to be like a one-to-one comparison, but that is a book that I absolutely loved, and this seems like a fun twist on that, and that it's also about gender and a woman stepping outside of the role that society has prescribed for her, and then the addition of transgender characters. I'm looking forward to this. So this one did make the shortlist. We'll see if it ultimately wins the prize. It's a great international booker list, so there are a lot of worthy contenders, but this really sounds interesting to me, and I got it. Yeah, I broke down and I ordered it from the UK. I thought it was going to take a lot longer than this. Usually when I order something from Blackwell's, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. This took a week, exactly. So I thought it was going to get here in May, and it arrived today. That's really cool. I'm excited. Can't wait to get to this. Let's do the opening of this book. Part 1, Ma's Back. Chapter 1. A tale tells itself. It can be complete, but also incomplete, the way all tales are. This particular tale has a border and women who come and go as they please. Once you've got women and a border, a story can write itself. Even women on their own are enough. Women are stories in themselves, full of stirrings and whisperings that float on the wind, that bend with each blade of grass. The setting sun gathers fragments of tales and fashions them into glowing lanterns that hang suspended from clouds. These too will join our story. The story's path unfurls, not knowing where it will stop, tacking to the right and left, twisting and turning, allowing anything and everything to join in the narration. It will emerge from within a volcano, swelling silently as the past boils forth into the present, bringing steam, embers, and smoke. That's a great opening paragraph. Has me even more excited to get to this at some point. My plate is pretty full for at least the next 2 months. I'm going to try to cram some things in May, and then in June I do pretty exclusively LGBTQ reading. And actually, other than True Biz, all of these qualify in some way. So maybe I'll try to put these on my pile of possibilities for June, but I'm guessing a lot of these are going to have to wait until July or August, a little bit later in the year. I'm hoping I will get to as many of them as possible. If you have ideas about which ones I should prioritize first, let me know in the comment section down below. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear them. Please put them in the comment section down below. If you're as excited about the arrival of Tomb of Sand and Love in the Big City and all the others, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.